Hello, welcome to the program Issues on ABS Radio and Television. I am Eze Ongju. Today we shall look at how to curb fire outbreak in our environment. Curbing fire outbreak in our environment. Fire outbreak in both urban and rural areas in Nigeria has assumed an alarming rate, as there is barely a day without an incident of fire outbreak, leaving as a result destruction of properties worth millions of naira and sometimes loss of lives. On this program today, we shall look at the causes of fire outbreak and ways of preventing fire outbreak in our environment. And we have in the studio Mr. Martin Abele. He is the Chief Fire Officer of Anambra State. And he can hear his uncle.
Thank you very much. Danabara ekene mu ka anyị nọlị ya n'ụbọchị kịta.
Agility. And as you can all right, let's begin with can you hear more?
N'oyibo a ga-asịkwa nọ na ọkụ bụ an exothermic reaction produces oxidation of heat, oxygen, and the fuel. Ọbụrụ ndị sụrụ oyibo. A sị na ọkụ a ịhụrụ bụ ihe niile achịkọtara nke na-abụ mgbe ọ ga-abụ na ọ ha nọkọta ọnụ ọ wee wepụta ihe a anyị na-akpọ ya bụ ọkụ ọgbụgba n'onwe ya, nke bụ na ihe jikọtara ya ọnụ bụ ihe na-akpata ọkụ nke bụ heat, na the source of ignition bụ ihe a ga-ebute ya bụ ọkụ ọgbụgba, ma nke na-enyeziri ya aka bụzi oxygen bụ ikuku n'onwe ya. Ọ ga-abụ ihe nta nzukọ ọnụ ọ wee wepụta ihe bụ ọkụ ọgbụgba bụ fire, nke bụ na ka fire service na-akpọ triangle of combustion or fire triangle, maka na n'oyibo anyị ma na triangle bụ ihe nwere nkeji ihe ịtọ, three sides, and all three sides a bụ ihe na-ebute ọkụ ọgbụgba o zuru ezu: fuel, heat, and oxygen. Then ebe nwee ọkụ nke bụ iwepụ ofu n'ime ya, ị gazie ọkụ agaghị agba, o nwere ka ọkụ ga-esi wee nọkọ. Mana n'ihe taa nke na-anọ ebe a mgbe ọbụla bụ na dị constant gịnị oxygen bụ ya bụ ikuku dị ha na ndị ọzọ bụzi obere ihe ọkụ iji bido wee
ikuku dị ha na ndị ọzọ bụzi obere ihe ọkụ ibido. Ka anyị dezie na ihe na-akpata ọkụ a, maka anyị ma na ọkụ ịkọwa ihe bụ ọkụ na mmadụ adịrọ na mma, ọ bịara na mmadụ anwụọ ma ọ mebie ihe. Kedu ihe na-akpata ya?
Ekwuru say that na fire remains the best friend of man, and at the same time the worst enemy of man, especially when it gets out of hand. Ya wee bụrụ na ọkụ bụ enyi anyị ma bụrụkwa onye ilo nke mmadụ, maka na ọ na-abụ anyị were ọkụ a na-esi efe were ya in all the things we are doing, we cook, we eat, and this is the help of fire. Then whenever it gets out of hand, it becomes a problem, and that is when life and properties will be involved. Then you can take life, it can destroy properties. That time it has gotten out of hand, and everybody now also na-agbago na-agbada ka ha nwee ike wee zọọ ndụ ha. Ọ wee bụrụ gịnịkwa na-akpata ọkụ ọgbụgba abụ enyi anyị ma bụrụkwazie onye ilo anyị ma ọ bụ na ọ gafee nku aka. Ọ bụrụ mgbe ụfọdụ, most at times we find out now we are trying to enter dry season. Let me start with that. This dry season, ọtụtụ mmadụ ga-eme ihe na-akpata ya bụ ọkụ ọgbụgba. Ọkụ ole ma anyị na-anọ n'ọkọchị na-abụ ihe ndị mmadụ kpatara site na gịnị? Bushes around us. People will not cut the bushes, and ọkụ bidozie ịgba. Onwe ka ndị na-achụ anụ si wee tinye ọkụ n'ọfịa, onwoluzie wee mee gịnị wee bata wee baa n'ụlọ ndị mmadụ, esi ebe a wee gbalụzie wee gaba. Ọ ya bụ that we always advise people, cut off the bushes or grasses around your house, so that whenever that fire will come from any angle, then you'll be able to be free. From there, it will now spread to the houses close by and fire will start. Also the key bịa eke ọkụ niile gbagolo nke anyị ji aka anyị wee jee gbanyụ, we will find out na the majority, about 60% of it, ihe na-akpata ya bụ gịnị electrical fault. So I see the electrical fault a kedu ihe bụkwara ihe anyị na-anya ọtụtụ ụlọ dị iche iche otego alụrụ ya. We find out that the things the material, especially the electrical side of it is already weak. Kedu ihe na-eme anyị wee na-asị ndị mmadụ ọ bụrụ na ide use ọkụ gị gbanyụọ ya. When it is not in use, switch it off, because it's also a waste that you be in the house where you see everything and you are making you allow your lights to be on. You are not doing anything with it. Do you know what it will result to? Sometimes you may go to church, you go to market, go to school, go to work. You may even forget to switch it off because they've already taken the light. By the time you know it, or making it, or put a hand up or surge, power surge, and don't kind of say, put talk in there. I'm not in the house, I didn't even know what caused the fire. Getting a sweat where everyone you're okay with talk Nike, you also get maybe West Park, or I'm not soldier, or making it to talk more. Also, the key being able to talk about no money, or trying to send petrol in our car, or not around. People will sometimes hoard this petrol in their various places where it is not needed. Whoever okwesirable has store he also gave us a or me or ụfọdụ na-abụ adulterated kerosene, adulterated petrol. Some people na-eji esi nri onye ma n'ọkụ gbagolo ebe dị iche iche anyị jego. Ịhụ na that what is happening there. Ọ bụrụ adulterated kerosene bụ ihe na-ebute ya bụ gịnị ọkụ ọgbụgba. Mgbe ha ndị na-emix ihe niile ha gwakọcha ya, ndị na-use kerosene aga were ya gasie nri, itinyezi ya na stove which you are going to cook with. Ọ bụrụ gịnị osere ọkụ gbaba ụlọ. Ọzọ dịka ịbịa wee bụrụ cooking gas anyị ji esi nri, nke a na-akpọ ikuku mmụọ. Ọ jọgburu onwe ya ma tọgbuo onwe ya. Ọ wee bụrụ gịnị iwere ya na-esi nri ọ na-atọ. Maka na gịnị mere why people prefer that cooking gas, because even the pot, you will not even have time to wash your pot at any time, just like using stove. Then, because of that, we enjoy it so much. Then, what is now the problem? The kind of cylinder we use and the way we place the gas cylinder is also a problem. If you don't place it properly, then what it means, it can cause fire outbreak to the house. There may be some leakages which we do what can bring that swing up fire in that house. Or ihe onemo na be able to talk of. Ọzọkwa abịa na filling stations. Filling stations, anyị na-anya onwe ihe na-adị ka bucket na-adị na filling stations dị iche iche. Gịnị bụ ya na a na-akpọ ya fire bucket. Gịnị ka o kwesịrị ịdị n'ime ya? Ihe kwesịrị ịdị n'ime ya wee bụrụ dry sand. Ihe eji etinye dry sand bụ gịnị? Ọ bụrụ na fire extinguisher ga-adị n'nso, ime gịnị? I were dry sand wee gbanyụọ ọkụ, wụnye ọkụ awụnye ọkụ nwụnye ka a na-awụnye ya n'ụdị nke ahụ. O wee bụ gịnị? Onwe onye bịara ịgba mmanụ ọkụ abụọ petrol. O nwere ike na ntụmadụ ọkụ abanye na moto bido nwe. Kedu ihe ị ga-eme? Ọ yuzu fire bucket wee gbanyụọ ya. Mana ihe anyị na-ahụtazi na-abụ ịbịa na filling station tinye aka n'ime that the fire bucket, lụọ aka n'ime ya ka ya lụta aja, ya ọ na-esizi gịnị? Petrol. Ọ na-esizi petrol. Kama ya adị n'onwe ya wee dị dry kpọọ nkụ, ọ na-esi petrol. O nwezie ka esi nwe ihe dị aṅaa ka esi ị ga-eji ya bụ bucket wee wụnyụọ, ọ bụrụ gịnị cause more fire to whatever that is burning. O nwere ihe onye na ihe na-ebute ọkụ ọgbụgba n'ebe dị iche iche.
Ọtụtụ n'ime anyị amarọ ihe fire bucket anyị na-ekwu. Echebe na-afụ ya eche nọ ihe ndị filling station ji wee chọọ. Ọtụtụ n'ime anyị amarọ ihe bụ fire bucket, which means there are man-made causes, there are man-made factors, and then natural ones. Kedu nke aka akpalite ya ụka?
Abịa na ihe gbasara disaster, enwere two types of disaster: natural disaster and man-made disaster. Ọsọsọ ọkụ ọgbụgba bụ ihe nwere two sides a. It can be caused by man, it can come naturally. mana nke natural ada abịakebe n'obodo anyị bụ Naijiria. Ebe a na-enweta ya bụ na mba ụwa ndị ọzọ mepegolo emepe ka a na-enwe ike anụkọta anụ na ihe dịka forest ma ọhịa na-agba ọkụ n'ogide gbagba ọkụ nwee ike ọgba ihe dịka otu ọnwa otu emot anyị ahụbeghị ụdị ihe a n'okirikiri ndịda anya mana ihe anyị na-ahụ na saịdị anya bụ Naijiria bụ man-made fire disaster. So ọ na-abụ nke mmadụ na-akpata maka onweghị ọkụ ga-agba n'elu ụwa abụrụ mmadụ ga-akpata ya. Mmadụ ga-akpata ya isi na eletrik na-agba ọkụ. Who caused it? Because you did not switch off when you're supposed to switch off. Then there will be such that is human-made. Then isi gịnị na afịfịa asụrụ ya nọgide ọkụ si ebe onye ga-asụ ya, mmadụ ga-asụ ya, mmadụ ga-etinyekwa ebe ọkụ o wee mee gịnị o wee bute ọkụ ọgbụgba. Onwe ọkụ ya agba abụrụ mmadụ mụ na gị na-ege m ntị bụ ihe na-akpata ya bụ ọkụ ọgbụgba. Ọmụme man-made na-ebutekwa ọkụ ọgbụgba n'obodo anyị.
Adamma, what is the role of government? The government prevent fire outbreak. The role of government.
Ihe gọọmenti ga-eme iji nye aka wee gbochie ọkụ ọgbụgba. Nke izizi bụ were ka ọ kwegoro anyị ọta na ọ fịara arụ ime na ọkụ ya kwụsị ịgba kpamkpamkpam. N'oge fịa arụ abụ ọkwana na agaghị emenwu ya. Come on, will people be able to adhere to simple fire safety rules? If people were able to adhere to simple fire safety rules, then there will be no fire outbreak and the firefighters or fire service will be relaxing. But of course, in a day, as we are moving on, what government can do to make sure that this can be prevented or even reduced to that minimum is one, the policy. Government policy about fire service and the fire outbreak and the fire safety management. Once there is policy, a policy that can protect this or even prevent it, then we'll move on. Then another thing government can also do to make sure that these things will be stopped is the implementation, that is the enforcement side of it. Government will also encourage the agencies that can enforce whatever thing that is already existing in any policy which government has already made. Then this other side of it, government has done a lot of things. Then the provision of firefighting equipment for fire service, which the government is already doing, and they are trying their best to do that. Then government, once these things are provided for firefighters or fire service, then once there is fire outbreak, it's already there. What fire service will now do is to go in or move in to stop that fire from escalating or preventing it using other medium to prevent fire from happening at all.
Another government policy, I think, is to mandate institutions to provide fire safety equipment to, for their
institutions.
Workers,
yeah,
for their institutions, and then follow it up. Now, for instance, in ABSK we have a lot of fire extinguishers. We have a lot of them. Now, let me go to training. For instance, how often do you go to institutions and train them, tell them how to use these fire safety equipment?
Thank you. The major work of fire service is fire prevention. And this fire prevention is done through fire safety sensitization. That is a process whereby we teach the public on what to do for them to be able to prevent fire from occurring. I must tell you that Anambra State Fire Service have been doing this with assistance of the government, which provides a lot of means for us. We've been trying to do this and we've been doing it. Let me give you an instance. Anambra State Fire Service was at Onitsha to sensitize all the engineers in Onitsha who reside within Onitsha and close by Onitsha. And it was a success. We had a success story because people learned what they've never known about fire service and about fire itself and fire safety management. Sometimes people may think that they know. Once you mention fire, say, is it not that fire? No. This fire you think you know has gone beyond that fire. And we need people to be sensitized about it. So we move on. We go to churches, we go to schools, we go to offices and some industries to train them and sensitize them about fire. Now we have a program which may be coming. By the grace of God, we'll be able to finish this within the next month.
Now let's look at the fire extinguisher. A lot of institutions and individuals have this fire extinguisher both in their cars and their workplaces. What's the duration? How long does it take for it to expire? Because a lot of people have it, but they don't know whether it will expire or not.
Thank you. To start with, let me tell us what fire extinguisher is. Fire extinguisher is just, we define it as first aid firefighting equipment. We know what first aid is. First aid is just, first aid box is that which contains the thing we can use to apply on an injured person the earlier time before taking the person to the hospital. Then, the same thing applicable to fire extinguisher. Please, as I'm saying this, if you have your fire extinguisher, please bring it out. There's something I'm going to indicate there so that you know it as well. Now, the issue of fire extinguisher being a first aid firefighting equipment is because you use fire extinguisher at the early stage of the fire or the incipient stage of the fire. That's the only time you can use fire extinguisher. Sometimes I find it funny when I see people using fire extinguisher when the fire has already gotten out of hand. I call it waste of resources because there's no amount of fire extinguisher you can use at that point for you to stop the fire. You cannot. But you can only use it at the early stage of the fire. When the fire is still beginning or starting, when you apply the fire extinguisher, it will stop. That is why it is called first aid firefighting equipment. The other ones, when it has gotten out of hand, then it now turns to the secondary one, which is fire truck that can come to do that. Now, fire extinguisher officially lasts 6 months after the first use. Assuming after the manufacturing time you've used it and service it, then 6 months you do that. You have to look at it, service it, and make sure it's functional. Now, I want to tell us something because most of the times, some people have this fire extinguisher in their vehicle, even in their house, but they don't know how to use it. They don't know whether it is functional or not. Now, in the first place, if you have your fire extinguisher, just look at it. There's something, one of the parts that looks like a clock. That thing that looks like a clock, we call it pressurized gauge. That pressurized gauge is where your eyes will always go to. And that is why the road safety officers, that is where they look at any given time. If they stop you on the way, they will ask you of your fire extinguisher, then you look at it, they will look at it and see whether it's functional or not. How do you know this?
I want to interrupt here.
Okay.
Yes, as we are, as Mr. Martin, the Chief Fire Officer, was telling us, we're talking about the duration of a fire extinguisher. Now we have the fire extinguisher here. So please go ahead and tell us the explanation and, of course, how to use the fire extinguisher.
Thank you very much. As we were saying, look at this fire extinguisher properly. We have the parts of it. This is called the discharge hose, delivery hose. This is the head, the handle. Then there's always one here that is called the safety pin. But the most important place to look at is this that looks like a clock. If you look at this, it has two sides, and the two sides are, one is clockwise direction and anti-clockwise direction. Now, inside this again, you have a green part of it. The green portion, it must always have the yellow pointer, which must be at the center of this green portion. Now, that yellow pointer, if it is not there, it may go clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction. It goes anti-clockwise direction. What it is saying at that time is what? Recharge. That will tell you that this fire extinguisher is no longer functional. And that is why also, when you use it sometimes, they need to be looking at you, it will not perform. And if road safety officers stop you on the way, they will always ask you, let me see your fire extinguisher, and this is where they will be looking at to make sure that that yellow pointer is at the center of the green portion. Then they will allow you to go. Now, that is just that. But it doesn't end there. How do you operate the fire extinguisher? That is another thing. To operate this fire extinguisher, there's what we call pass. 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 And that is applicable to fire extinguisher. What do we mean by pass? The first one, P, is pull. What are we pulling? You pull the safety pin. Once you remove the safety pin, you are pulling it out. Then you'll be able to carry the fire extinguisher this way. Then when you carry it, the first A is aim. What are you aiming? You are aiming the source of that fire. Then once you aim it there, the next one is what? Squeeze. You now squeeze the handle. And squeezing the handle, you are directing it to that fire. Wherever the fire is starting, that is where you direct it and operate it. As you are doing that, you do this one, which is S, sweeping. Because the fire must have started somewhere and is spreading. You do the sweeping for you to be able to catch all of them. That is pass. PASS. Pull the pin. A, aim the base of the fire. S, squeeze the handle for that discharge to happen. And sweep, which is the last S. This is about fire extinguisher. And in fire extinguishers, we have different types of fire extinguishers. We have the DCP, which is dry chemical powder. We have the CO2, which is carbon dioxide. We have the water gas, which is water gas fire extinguisher. And in many of it, we have also foam, chemical foam of fire extinguisher. And once you are using all these things, you find out that it is easier for you to use this to extinguish the fire at the earlier stage than allowing the fire to escalate for you to call fire service to come and fight the fire. That is all about fire extinguisher. And we always advise people, please, if you need this in your home, if you see where fire extinguisher performs miracle, it will marvel you. Then because people doesn't believe in this, they don't think they can afford this. It's affordable. You can always use it. And I will advise people, if you have kitchen and you are using cooking gas, and also inside your kitchen, please always go for CO2. Why I advise people to go for CO2 instead of this one is DCP. It contains dry chemical powder inside. And once you operate it inside your kitchen, it can contaminate the food inside it. But if it is CO2, once you operate it, the next thing is what? It will now diffuse. It will evaporate and leave through the window, and it will not affect anything. That is why we advise people use CO2 in the kitchen. Then you can now install these other ones anywhere around the house for easy accessibility. Thank you.
Anyị na-ekele Chief Fire Officer Anambra State, Mr. Martin Agwele, ka ọ na-enye anyị ndụmọdụ ikpeazụ gwa ya ọzọ maka Harmattan, ọkọchị abịawago, ihe anyị ga-eme ka anyị wee gbanarị ọkụ ọgbụgba. Chetakwala ndị filling station ọzọ, ndị a na the attendants, they don't know what that bucket is. Achọ ịgbafu fuel na ga-echenye ya ebe a fuel abụnye n'ime aja.
Ọ na-abụ ihe dị petrol attendant ndị nwe filling station anyị na-adị na-abịa etire n'ụfọdụ n'ime ha. Mana mgbe ụfọdụ ịhụ na ọ na-abụ anyị bịa asị anyị na onwego onye ga-akụziere ọfa, anyị sị anyị nwere nsogbu n'ụdị a, onye akụzitelu n'ọfụma, no problem. But our concern is for them to be what? Safety conscious of whatever they are doing. So here the petrol attendants in the member, how many charge money petrol? That little one that is there remaining at the nozzle, instead of discharging it inside the tank, they discharge it inside a fire bucket, thereby making the fire, the sand to be wet. Not just wet. Now, when you perceive it, when you dip your finger inside it and perceive it, what you perceive is what? Petrol. And it's dangerous. Because if there's any fire anywhere and you try to use the bucket, then you are increasing the bucket. I want to tell us, please, we need to work on these petrol attendants and teach them properly. Sensitize them more on the issue of handling this nozzle and the petrol.
Neighbors in the morning, on my Tupanya, somebody sent a message. Dr. Dennis came and said, "Sir, I commend this public enlightenment program. Your guest, the chief Musonoko engineer Martin Abele, please, some people said detergents like Omo don't help to stop quench fire."
This is good. I think I heard that question. Let me just treat it because everyone needs to hear about it. Let me tell us one thing. Most of the times when you find out in Okuna, one thing more than 80, hey, bute no mo. I'm sorry, no mo. Obropa, ekajo, akolun. You no mo abagay on since I buy the obera no mo. So what we mean at this point is detergent. It can be any detergent as well. So when they shout bute no mo, here they making a deputy a chopper mill I want to tell us one thing. That Omo and the water doesn't have any effect on serious fire. Every types of classes of fire, every class A fire, class B fire, class D, class K, is only Omo no class A fire. Class A fire are free burning materials like clothes, paper, wood, rubber, and so on. If 1 million in ordinary water, forget about bring Omo, bring detergent, bring this. No, ordinary water will stop it. But Obana class B are petroleum products. Now, flammable liquids, so to say. Those flammable liquids can be petrol, it can be kerosene, it can be diesel, it can be candle wax or coltan. Then when you add water, even with that Omo or detergent, you increase the fire. It can't stop it. From the bonnet, the engine side. Now, Okupido, he can make him repair your bonnet. The money put them milisi with almost. Let me be honest with us, it's only by the grace of God when you pour that water there, it can stop it. But when petrol, it cannot. What you see now is what? Splash. And that splash means that the fire is because the petrol is there. Let me tell us what normally happens. Bring out a container, ordinary container, put petrol there and add water. The next thing you see, the petrol now will be on top. What it means is that petrol is lighter or less dense than the water. What it means again, inside that bonnet or the engine side, if you add water in that burning petrol, the water will now go down and spring up the petrol with the fire, and you see splash. So it doesn't have any effect. It just waste of material or resources. Only just maybe Omo or detergent one money no we assisi butia. Omo walk one and some years back. Fire service routed. Obuno no tanka mmiri ka akobiri bu so leba. Ihe ndị mmadụ na-ebe gịnị? Eje na agba ebute detergent niile dị n'ụwa wunye n'ime ya. Ịma ndị mmadụ na-eche na ihe a na-akpọ ụfụfụ. Anyị na-eji agbanye ọkụ bụ Omo ma ọ bụ n'elu detergent. No, that thing is chemical foam compound. It mixes with water and now discharges that. You see that foaming substance. Oburo Omo, oburo clay, oburo any other detergent can they use. So give me one year mistake again and need a waste that thing. Obuhana no oburo class A fire. Now walk free burning material, forget it. It can't do anything.
A lot of things to know about fire and fire outbreak and how to prevent it. As we go on, as we approach the Hamilton season, we'll be inviting Mr. Martin Abrele, the Chief Fire Officer of Anambra State, to come and tell us more about firefighting and fire prevention. Thank you very much. As our agility, Mr. Martin Abrele. I think
on the APS and the management of APS. Thank you for inviting Anambra State Fire Service to this program. We will continue to do our best from Dana to Danabara. And I want to tell us, fire prevention and fire safety management is everybody's business. And also know that fire kills, but you can prevent it. Thank you.
Thank you very much on behalf of everybody in the house, and of course my producer Don Onyenji. I am Omoji. I wish you well. See you again. Bye for now.